Going back to Bill Veith, who's done a lot of research on this subject, local Austin activist, and of course has 2 doctorates in psychology. Bill or Doctor, please continue getting into this, because you had gotten up to the gold being confiscated in 1933 and the whole War Powers Act, then accelerating up into the late 60s and the dual system they had us on, and now where we are today. And let's talk about Bretton Woods.
Okay, yeah, Bretton Woods was a major event in our monetary history. After the, or toward the conclusion of the World War II, the major the countries of the world, the major countries of the world got together at Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, at a hotel, and they laid out a plan to establish a new monetary system where the world was definitely going to go off the British pound sterling as the world's reserve currency and begin a new era of a dollar, the United States dollar, as the world's reserve currency. So what they did, what that meant was establishing it as a world's reserve currency was what they did was they decided that the central banks in all of these countries were going to hold dollars as their reserve assets to peg their own currency against. So they no longer had to hold gold or silver in reserve. They could hold dollars because the United States promised that those dollars would be redeemable internationally on demand for gold. And so the countries of the world believed them, just like the people of the United States did, that those dollars would always be redeemable.
Well, it's simple. You have the Anglo-American establishment. Even Forbes admits the biggest owner of American companies are the British oligarchy, and the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas, the Rothschilds, others. And so they openly said, we got the big military, you're going to do this, and countries that didn't got invaded.
Absolutely, and are still getting invaded to this day. There's a few countries that are not under the umbrella of the Federal Reserve, International Monetary Fund, World Bank.
Serbia wasn't, they got invaded. Iraq
Exactly.
wasn't.
Exactly.
Iran isn't. Afghanistan, Pakistan got overthrown. Yeah.
And North Korea, and I believe Libya at one time. So there were about 8 countries that were not under the umbrella, and coincidentally, those are the countries that the United States has always labeled the axis of evil, or the rogue countries that did not join the family of nations, because those central banks were not under the powers of the rest of the central banking system of the world. So anyway, in 1944, when they set up Bretton Woods, the dollar became the world's reserve currency. They set up an oil exchange in London and the United States, and set basically the rule was that all oil purchases in the world would be settled in dollars at those 2 exchanges.
And so they pegged the basic energy measurement or value to their fiat system as well.
Right. So if, let's say, Japan wanted to buy oil, they couldn't use yen to buy the oil. They had to use yen to buy dollars and use dollars to buy the oil. If Namibia or Cuba or any country wanted to buy oil, they had to get United States dollars, because they had to buy it at either the London or the New York Oil Exchange, and they would only sell it in dollars. So we imposed the fiat dollar on the rest of the world, and now the entire world had to start competing for the United States dollars. And then many countries, well, even if they traded with each other in other commodities or resources, they only settled their accounts in United States dollars. So literally, the dollar became the world's reserve currency, and it was in demand all over the world, so the United States could import inflation worldwide.
And then the euro came online 4.5 years ago, and since then we've seen a massive slide in the value of the dollar, from the euro being valued at its opening at 87 cents to the dollar, now being valued, depending on what day you look at it, at $1.30 above the dollar, $1.35 above the dollar. Or my mother was just over in Italy visiting friends, and she said, yeah, 10 or she was describing how basically 6 euros is $10.
Okay, well, you know, the euro is a fiat currency also. It's no better than the dollar, it's just newer in its lifespan. If you look at
they haven't inflated it yet.
Right, not as much. They actually have inflated it, just less than what we've inflated the dollar. So in relative terms, they haven't inflated.
So basically the same globalists are starting a new Ponzi scheme.
Exactly, because they know that every fiat currency has a lifespan. It has a beginning and a middle and an end. And as you look at the decline curve, as it reaches its end, the decline curve starts to go parabolic, and that's when they know they have to implement another system.
It speeds up.
It speeds up. That's what. Yeah.
Where are we right now on that graph? You can show the cameras that are in here.
Well, if you're going down, you start. The dollar starts to decline very gradually, and then the slope gets steeper and steeper and steeper, and all of a sudden it starts to just drop off the table, and we're right where it's starting to drop off that table.
I was about to say every indicator is, and every indice is that it's starting the plunge.
That's called the parabolic decline, where you start to get the curve instead of the straight line decline. It curves down.
I mean, this is amazing, and these same people, as they do this to us, I talk to successful people, and I talk to millionaires who don't even understand this, and they go, "I wasn't taught that in economics," and they just roll their eyes at you. But some poor immigrant from China or Mexico, they know all about having a weak currency.
Well, because they've been stuck enough times with their currencies losing their value. See, it's never happened generation after generation after generation. It hasn't happened in the United States. We've been able to impose the currency system for a longer period of time because it is the world's reserve currency.
So why is the Bretton Woods Agreement post World War II breaking up? I mean, I talked about it earlier, and Trilateral Commission said that they had to basically hide the parabolic plunge that you were just talking about,
Right.
And so to do that, they have to give other false alternatives. It's kind of like with Bush. He's seen as the evil neocon, so the global media acts like, oh, but the loving liberal UN will save you. They give us false choices. Is that what you see happening?
Yes, I do. And, actually, I see it as in 1971, I think we actually entered into Bretton Woods II. What happened in 1971 was the United States defaulted worldwide on redemption of dollars for gold. So starting in 1971 is really the year that we started being a full-blown fiat currency. Before that, it was still redeemable in gold internationally.
Yeah, people talk about what a conservative Nixon was. Price fixing, dozens of new federal agencies, taking us off the silver and gold standard.
Well, he wasn't a conservative. He was a straight globalist. He was a puppet of the globalists. That's all our presidents have been since Lincoln. But in 1971, when we went off the gold standard internationally, the United States had made agreements with OPEC to only sell oil in dollars worldwide and only at certain prices. And so we kind of went off the gold standard, but we went on an oil standard. And oil has been the de facto backer of the dollar since '71, and that's breaking down.
And so militarily, the Anglo-American establishment has to dominate those oil reserves and those oil pools. People always think, well, Saddam, our government didn't want the oil because now the oil isn't even flowing at previous levels. They don't understand that the globalists have said in their own documents. They got mad at Saddam in 1990 for, quote, over-pumping. OPEC got mad. It was driving down prices. He said, I'm just paying off my debts. I have a right to do this. I have a right to sell as much oil as I want. Then they set him up. I'm not defending Saddam. He was one of their cronies. But I mean, right there, it shows they actually want to keep oil prices high, and now that's why they want to go into Iran and secure some of the major oil reserves right along the Iraqi border and claim that that's a buffer zone, again, to keep the price high.
Well, and not only that, but they have to keep it where where oil is only settled in dollars.
Exactly.
Because if it starts to be settled in euros or seashells or gold or silver, anything else but dollars, then the dollar will continue its implosion.
The Arabs are always talking about going to a gold system where you have to buy their oil in gold. The problem is there's not that much gold out there. Now the Chinese are coming into the gold market. The CHICOM government is allowing their people to buy gold, and I think that's part of one of the things that's stimulating the surge in gold prices.
Well, I'm sure it is, but I think it's kind of a fallacy to say there isn't enough gold out there. There is enough. All you have to do is revalue the gold price. In other words, there's not
make
enough.
A smaller unit worth more.
Exactly.
Which is actually how supply and demand works.
Exactly. What it would do is it would bring down the false prices that we have of everything based on this inflated currency, and everything would get back into line with the real value of gold against gold or silver. And so there is enough gold.